I have been on a long deployment, and finally, after a year, I'm getting back home. This is the first time I have been able to go back home and see my family. Hell, this is the first time that I have touched dry land in a long time. We had a quarantine deployment and did not get to go anywhere this time. It was the worst. The plane lands, I get my rental car checked out, and grab my bags. I find the rental car by hitting the lock button multiple times, and load it up with my bags. I think that's how most people find their cars. Anyway, I strap in and start heading to my family's house. I am driving for about 20 minutes and notice there is a really thick fog layer in the town on the way to my house. That's weird, because it usually isn't foggy like this time of year. Honestly, I'm not sure about seeing fog like that ever. Have I been gone so long I can't remember? I suddenly get a migraine when I'm thinking about it. I carefully try to stay on the road as the migraine subsides. As I am driving to my parents' house, the fog seems to be getting thicker and harder to see through. It is becoming very difficult to see the road in front of me, so I have to use my fog lights and reduce my speed considerably. I need to make it there in one piece. I am going about 15 miles per hour now. It would be unfortunate to go through an entire deployment and die on the way home. Trust me, it does happen. I had a friend that was hit by a car 2 days after another deployment. He was just walking down the street from a fast food joint back to his apartment when he was struck by a vehicle from behind. It was a hit and run. The poor guy was in a coma and had to be in intensive care for months. Ultimately, he survived the ordeal. While heading down the foggy road, I am starting to notice that there are no other cars on the road but mine. I know it's late, but I remember seeing at least a few cars on this road at this time back when I lived here. The road is eerily devoid of any human presence. Despite all odds, I get to my parents' house safely, but no one seems to be home. All of the lights are off, and there are no cars in the driveway. It is eerily quiet. I had just talked to my mother on the phone when I left my duty station, and now they're nowhere to be found. It looks like my parents' place is abandoned. I knock on the door. There is no answer. I tried to call them from the front door where I'm standing, and there's no answer. It's like they're not home at all. Where could they be? I called my mother and finally get a hold of her, and she says, "Hello, sweetie. Yeah, we're all in the house. Just come in." That's extremely odd since all the lights are out and nobody seems to be home. I open the door and go in the house. The door is unlocked and opens easily when I open it. The atmosphere completely changes. It goes from dark to light. Suddenly, all my family is there in the main room of the house. Everyone is there. My mom, my dad, my brother Mike, my sister Katie, even my Uncle Bob and Aunt Martha. My Grandma Patty and my Grandpa Walter were there too. I haven't seen them in forever. What a great welcome home. They are all dressed up for Christmas wearing festive sweaters. The tree is beautifully decorated, and there's a hot meal cooking in the kitchen. There's a glorious fire in the fireplace. What a perfect Christmas family get-together to walk into after all that time deployed. There was only one thing that was really confusing me. I know I had been gone a long time, and I had missed a bunch of family stuff, but I thought that my Grandpa Walter had died while I was on deployment. Now he's here, standing in front of me, like nothing has happened. It stays in the back of my mind as I get around to everyone and talk about what I have been through. I talk to everybody and thank them for being there, and everybody welcomes me with open arms. They all raise their glass and give me a cheers, and Walter says, "We're so proud of the sacrifice you've made for your country." Everyone is always saying thank you for your sacrifice, but when he said it, he had a sad look on his face. We are glad you were able to spend your last Christmas with us before you go on the next step of your journey. The next step of my journey? What was that? My mom cries while hugging me and says, "I'm so sorry that we lost you on your deployment." Lost me? I'm right here. What do you mean? Sweetie, I don't know how to break this to you, but you fell off your ship and you drowned in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and you are dead. What? A jet blew you off the side and you fell 90 feet. You were dead on impact, more than likely due to the water becoming like concrete at that height. They sent out the helicopters to look for you for 6 days straight, 24 hours a day, but couldn't find you. This is limbo. You are on your way to heaven or hell. Hopefully it's heaven. And this is your last chance to see your family, which is why your Grandpa Walter is here. You were right. He died in his sleep about 6 months ago. Isn't it great you can talk to him one last time? We want you to know that we love you and miss you, and just because you're dead doesn't mean it's the end of you. Merry Christmas, everyone. Make sure you love everyone as much as possible. You never know when you're going to go, and if you do, will you know you're gone? So this story happened almost 2 decades ago. I never had a place to tell it though, until this subreddit. Despite this makes up one of my core memories from childhood because of how creepy it was when I was younger. Apologies for the formatting. I'm on mobile. It was around 2008. Me, my mom, my dad, and my brother were on a bus to go to a very popular and well-known mall when I was around the age of 4. At the time, we didn't have a car, so we had to take a few buses where we lived to get to this mall. One bus I got on, that led directly to the mall from one of the stops, was very crowded. I mean, everyone was riding up on each other crowded. There wasn't much room for any of us to move, so my family had to stand. Sometime during the bus ride, when we were getting closer to the mall, I ended up getting separated from my parents. Forced behind roughly 2 or 3 people and unsure of where my parents were, I panicked. We were near the back, by the rear doors. I was standing just a foot or 2 away from the stairs which led to an elevated area of the bus, and beside me was an old guy who was sitting in the seat right across from me. Something my parents had always taught me when I was a kid was whenever the bus was moving, you were always to hold the rails so you wouldn't get knocked around or go flying off. Due to my position on the bus, there was only a singular rail I could hold on to, the one right in front of this guy's seat. Because of what I was taught, I naturally held on to it so I wouldn't bump into people in front of me. This old guy, in response, grabs my hand firmly, holding my hand against the rail so I couldn't let go or get away. This man looked like your average grandpa and appeared to be in his 70s. And he was definitely able to overpower me, who I was basically in the toddler range. The facial expression this man gave to me was forever engraved into my mind. I can never unsee it. Instead of a gentle smile like an old grandpa would make at a child, this grin was much more sinister, and he laughed at me in response, trying to get my hand free once the bus had stopped and the doors were open. In fact, when the doors opened, he held onto my hand even tighter to stop me from leaving. Thankfully, I was able to wiggle my hand free because of the position in which his hand was at. I never had a chance to tell anyone this story, so Reddit, here you go. Old guy, let's not meet again. One time, I was walking home from the train station after I spent the weekend at my aunt's house. It was about 11 p.m. at night and very dark outside. When I was almost home, I noticed a guy on crutches in front of me, who walked in the same direction, then stopped every couple of meters to turn around and look at me before continuing to walk on. Since he was walking with a limp, I quickly passed him. When I did, he stopped walking and grinned at me in a very creepy way. I kept moving. Since I lived in an apartment over a burger restaurant, for a moment I considered to ask one of the employees to walk me to the front door. But to get to the entrance of the apartment part of the house, you had to walk around the house into a dark court. Finally, I, however, didn't ask because I thought, what could possibly happen? The guy's on crutches, and I didn't want to come across childish. So I was walking through the court of our house and wanted to pull out my keys while walking. Suddenly, I couldn't find them in my handbag. I realized I had thrown them somewhere in my travel bag because I didn't want to lose them from my handbag while staying at my aunt's and being out with her all the time. So still standing in the middle of the court, I had to search the whole travel bag for the damn key. I was so distracted by the whole key searching incident, I totally forgot about the creepy guy I had encountered before. When I finally pulled the key out of the bag, I looked up, and the creepy guy from before was standing right in front of me, grinning. I always thought in a situation like this I would start screaming, but instead I couldn't get myself to make any sound at all. With my keys in my hand, I started running to the front door, opened it, and jumped inside the house. The guy, still walking with a limp, followed me as fast as he could. Luckily, due to his injury, he wasn't as fast as me. Unfortunately for me, our front door was one of those doors that slowly fall into the lock automatically. But when you try to push them in order to shut them quicker, it pressures back and stops you from slamming it. So there I was, trying to push the door into the lock while the creepy guy was on his way, following me. So there I was, trying to push the door into the lock while creepy guy was on his way to follow me into the house. Believe it or not, the door fell into the lock right in the second he reached the doorstep. Through the glass door, we just looked at each other, both breathing heavily from the race. He looked quite disappointed. I quickly ran upstairs to my apartment and locked myself in it. Later that night, I looked outside my window and saw the same man walking up and down the road in front of the house. He stayed there for about 3 to 4 hours after the incident. I can't tell you what it was that made me not call the cops. I guess I was like, after all, nothing happened. But then, what can they really do about it? After that, I didn't feel safe in my home anymore, because I knew that he knew where I lived. I only left my apartment when being picked up or dropped off, and made sure to be home before it was turning dark every day for 2 weeks. Finally, I decided to go to the police and tell them about it to ask whether they can keep a special eye on the neighborhood for a bit. I went to the police station, and it happened exactly as I feared. They took out notes and said, we can't really do anything about it right now. You should have called before, but we'll make a note. A couple of days passed, and suddenly I get a call back from another police officer who asks me about what happened. Then he tells me that they've been looking for a guy on crutches for months already, because he molested several girls in our town, followed them into their apartments, and even slept in front of their doors. He had been in police custody before, got out, and violated probation. He had some kind of mental illness too. The police officer told me immediately to call in case the guy showed up again. He luckily never did. It was only then I understood the seriousness of the situation and realized that I most likely escaped an attempted assault in some sort of way by just an inch. I, in a way, didn't believe myself that the whole thing actually happened before the police guy called me back. This was about 5 years ago, but I still think about it from time to time, and it still gives me the creeps. Hey, creepy guy, let's never meet again. So I was looking for a baby swing for my newborn daughter. Unfortunately, I did not buy one when I should have, when they were on sale or free for my baby shower. I was being a cheapskate. Now I am paying for it because my poor baby won't go to sleep after I fed her, burp her, and change her diaper. So at this point, I'm pretty desperate and just want to find any swing that can possibly relax her to sleep and give me a little bit of relief. I start looking on different places that sell items like Mercari, eBay classifieds, and OfferUp. However, I do find something on the time-tested Craigslist. There was a baby swing for $70. The 10 pictures on the site looked good. It seems like a nice clean swing, no issues. There's even a video that shows the swing in action with the cutest baby on it. It looks like a cell phone video and not some stock video that someone took off the internet. The price is really low, but the post seems legit. I DM the seller and let them know I'm interested in purchasing the baby swing for $70. After I send the message, I get a response almost immediately. It was like the seller was staring at the app, waiting to sell the swing as soon as possible. The seller DMs me and says, "Sure, that sounds like a plan. I live out past North Creek Road. So put that in your GPS and smoke it." Ha ha ha. Just kidding. That was kind of a weird joke, I thought. But whatever. I really want the swing, and I don't really want to talk too much to this person, but I'm willing to deal with it so I can get a $70 swing for my daughter, so I can get a little bit of a break. No big deal. So I'm prepared to go and deal with this individual who's probably going to tell a million jokes and not be funny. So I asked my buddy Brian, "Hey man, can you come with me? I'm picking up a baby swing." "No problem, I'll go." "Sweet, sounds like a plan." So after talking with Brian, I'm good, because I don't have to go alone. Brian and I get in my pickup truck and drive to the address this person has on their Craigslist for a location. From the conversation we had, it was North Creek Road, which was matching up with the GPS. So far, so good. I have seen that road before, so I am not going in blind. We start heading over that way. Unfortunately, my wife couldn't come with us. She was at work, but this was a great opportunity. She will be so surprised if she comes home and I have an almost new swing waiting for her, because she would benefit from it as well. She would be impressed I could do all of this without her. We arrive at the location and see a couple on the porch of a decent-looking 2-story house with blue shutters and a red roof. They had the white picket fence as well. A real American dream kind of home. They seemed like they had the life. We went in the house and picked up the swing without incident. So I get home and Brian leaves. I appreciate his help. I start putting the swing together and notice that some key components are missing. Specifically, the component that connects the arm of the swing to the swing motor. I thought I had everything, but now I don't. And I'm a little irritated now because I have to call the seller again. So I call. "Hey, how's it going?" "I'm good. How are you?" "Hey, I just picked up the swing from your house, and I was noticing that I didn't have the arm of the swing that connects to the main portion of it. Do you by any chance have that?" "Oh, I'm sorry, we forgot that. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, sitting on my garage floor. If you want, we could possibly bring it up to you in a couple of days, because we have some stuff going on. Can't do it tonight." A couple of days was too much time for me, so I decided I was going to go back and pick up this arm for the swing myself. I told the seller, "Hey, do you mind if I go back tonight and pick up the swing arm?" "Well, I gotta ask my husband." So she gets off the phone and asks her husband. I'm sitting here for a few minutes just irritated by the whole thing. I was more mad at the seller than myself at this point and just wanted to fix this little irritation. The seller gets back on the phone and lets me know I can come over tonight and pick it up, no problem. They're gonna wait there and just wait for me to show up. Perfect, I think. So I get in the car and I drive another 30 minutes that it takes to get over there again. I am really not happy about it. Unfortunately, I was so mad that all I was thinking about was this and not paying attention to much else. I finally get there, and the feeling I got when I approached the house was a little different than the last time I was here, a couple of hours ago. I did not see the neighbor children playing in the yards around the house, and I did not see a couple on the porch swing or on the front porch at all when I was going up the long driveway. I did not see the same number of cars in the neighborhood that I did earlier. That's odd. It was like the neighborhood left, or at least around the house they left. I thought they were gonna stay here and wait for me, but I'm getting the feeling they did not, and they're not here. I guess I'll go check it. I park the car and headed out. I head towards the front door and knock. I knock again. I'm knocking and nobody's coming, so I call the seller's number in my phone. I give her a call and she's not answering. Great. Nobody's answering, and I just drove all the way out here. How could this be happening? I drove all the way out here and now I'm stuck. If I can't get that part, I'm totally screwed. I call 2 more times with no luck. I see something in the corner of my eye on the left side of where I was standing. It looks like the shape of a person in the distance that seems to be staring at me. Okay. Don't make it awkward, buddy. There is another person in the tree line in the distance. I can't really tell, but it kind of looks like a person. That's cool, whatever. This neighborhood's doing whatever it wants. It's not my business. I just need that swing arm. However, he starts walking towards me. He's still pretty far out there, but he's making some gains. Then I start looking around and just sizing up my surroundings. When I do, I notice that there is now a car in the long driveway that I just drove up. It's behind me about 50 yards. It's parked with the lights off. There are 2 guys sitting in the car. I definitely don't remember passing a car when I drove up here. Did I pass this car, or is this new? I'm not sure. I'm getting a tingling sensation on the back of my neck. Alright, I'm going to give the seller 1 more call, and if they don't answer, I'm getting out of here, because this is starting to creep me out, and I'm not going to stick around to find out what's going on. I call the seller 1 more time, and on the second ring, the figure from the tree line starts running at full speed at me. I almost shit my pants when I saw this maniac running towards me. I'm not that fast, and I'm terrified at this point. You can count me out for this baby swing, because I'm not getting it anymore. Not interested. I run straight to my car and crank the ignition. I floor it out of there. The guy I saw running after me was getting pretty close. I look in my rearview mirror and see 2 guys getting out of their car and start coming towards me. I reverse swipe the front end of my car about 180 degrees and I punch it. On the left side of my car, I see the other man running at me as well. There are 4 guys running at my car. When I floored it, I hit something that made a popping sound when I went past that parked car. 2 guys that just got out of the car just tried to get in my way, but I swerved to the right into the dirt to avoid them. I successfully got around them. I don't know what made that pop sound back there, but I was going to just keep driving no matter what, even if something happened to my tires. My life is on the line now, and I'm not stopping. I don't stop until I get about 15 minutes away. So I pull over to an abandoned parking lot of a bar that was closed down during the pandemic. I get out to check my truck and notice that all 4 tires are popped. What could have possibly done that? I was so happy to be safe and away from that situation. I eventually did get a baby swing at a normal store for $250 because I did not want to look anymore at any more internet selling sites again. I talked to the police about the whole thing. They made me realize that most people come with a friend initially to pick things up when they order something from Craigslist. If the sellers leave a part out of the transaction and the buyer does not notice, the seller knows that they will have to call back and pick up the part later. When the buyer comes back to pick up the missing part, they are mad they are going back and typically alone, and they're not thinking straight. They don't even consider bringing someone with them because they've already met the seller and feel comfortable just going to get it. It is a new sophisticated problem that we are dealing with. You are lucky to be alive. My girlfriend and I rented a cabin in the woods at our local mountain for the weekend. We had been together only a few weeks, but she was everything I ever wanted. She was smart, beautiful, and we had so much in common. The trip was my treat as I was trying to impress Cassandra. We were headed up to the cabin on a windy road when Cassandra had to go to the bathroom. I stopped at the nearest gas station she saw called A&P. When we went in, Cassandra found the bathroom and gave me a kiss. While she was in the bathroom, I took a look at my surroundings. I noticed that the stuff on the shelves was dusty. It was like the shop did not have many customers in a while. It looked kind of disgusting. I was wondering how Cassandra could possibly use a bathroom in a place like this. I noticed the cashier was staring at me, so I said, "Hi, how you doing?" He just continued to stare at me. Another man came through one of those cheap, beady doors on the right side of the room. He went to the cashier and whispered something in his ear. The cashier kept staring at me and nodded yes. What the hell was that? Cassandra came out of the bathroom smiling embarrassingly, like the bathroom was very disgusting, and for me, just did not ask. We walked out the door, and I saw Cassandra look back at the guys. "Those guys are weird, huh?" "Oh yeah," I said. We got back in the car and drove the rest of the windy roads another 30 minutes. We made it to the cabin, and it was really nice. I was relieved because that gas station made me think the cabin would have been a mess. The sun was setting as we got there, but we were able to see the pool, jacuzzi, and the balcony that had a great view of the mountain landscape. We enjoyed the sunset together for one last time. There was also a fully stocked liquor cabinet with a professional-looking bar in the living room. After the sunset, Cassandra asked me if I wanted a drink. I said, "Sure." Cassandra made the drinks while I used the bathroom and put some cologne on to really get the attraction hot. This was just perfect. She dimmed the lights and put some music on. "Cheers," we both said as we enjoyed our first drink. I was done with my first drink and I started to feel a little dizzy. I tell Cassandra I was feeling dizzy. She gets on her phone and simply says, "He's ready." I try to get up, but fall off my bar stool and land on my back. I look over at the door and see these guys from the gas station come through the door, standing over me with Cassandra. She says, "Well, that was easy." When I woke up, I was tied to a chair. There was a variety of cutting tools laid out on the table in front of me. How did this happen to me? In that moment, I realized what had happened. Cassandra actually had helped me at the very last minute, pick out this exact cabin. It was her idea to stay in the area. I was originally looking somewhere else. She told me where to stop so she could go to the bathroom. I did not know at the time, but she was tipping the guys off that we had arrived. And Cassandra put something in my drink when I was going to the bathroom. I really thought I had found someone special, but instead, I died up on that mountain that day. I was never found. Make sure you know who you're with. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Who is the New Year's Eve stalker? It's an urban legend that has been heard for many, many years in many towns. The New Year's Eve stalker looks for someone who doesn't have anyone special in their life, but finds someone the night of New Year's Eve. If something happens, that negatively impacts the meetup, and it leads to that person not having anyone to kiss at midnight. The New Year's Eve stalker is awakened. When the New Year's Eve stalker finds out you don't have anybody, it smells you out, gets a scent of you, searches for you, like an animal. Once it finds you, it can stalk you relentlessly until it has you. It knows that you won't be missed, and your soul will be there for the taking for its collection. So don't be caught partying on New Year's Eve without a special someone in your life. It's just too bad that Jenna didn't know about the New Year's Eve stalker story before it was too late. So it was New Year's Eve. Jenna is attending a rooftop party in downtown San Diego. The party overlooks the Padres Stadium and has a pool right in the middle of the hangout area with couches all around it. It is a very beautiful location, only reserved for the richest, most popular elite in San Diego. Jenna is there with her friend Kristen. They are perfectly content hanging out together as friends and not pursuing anybody else for the rest of the night. They have their first glass of champagne, and they're feeling pretty good. Their favorite song comes on, and they get on the dance floor and let loose a little bit. They are having such a good time. They have their second drink, and they are really starting to feel good. What a great party. By the time they get their third drink, they're starting to feel a little dizzy and energetic. They are having the time of their lives dancing with random guys they don't care about. Then they both start dancing with two guys that are hitting their nerves. They are both real estate guys and very good looking. After being out on the dance floor for a while, they all sit down on the couches by the pool, all dressed up in New Year's suits and dresses. Jenna and Kristen introduce themselves more formally to Dan and Mark. They all discuss the great time they're having, and there seems to be a definite compatibility with Jenna and Dan, and Mark and Kristen respectively. The two couples are a great match. This seems so perfect. Jenna had not been dating for a long time after a 4-year relationship ended sadly in arguments and despair. Jenna had really loved her fiance, but she was left for a younger woman. Not that she was that old. She was 26, but there's something about guys wanting stupid younger girls to control that drove Jenna crazy. She had a good job as a real estate lender and was making enough money that could provide for a whole family on her own, but she just couldn't get the one. She felt like things were looking good tonight. Dan had a master's degree in business and was a top real estate agent in San Diego County. He was fun to hang out with and had a great smile. How did this catch avoid her radar before this night, as they both were in similar businesses? Jenna was becoming infatuated with Dan, first of all because of what he could be to her, and because he was just so much fun. On the other hand, Mark and Kristen were getting along swimmingly as well. Kristen was a career woman who bought into the full-blown feminism from her mother and decided she did not want a man telling her what to do. But as time had gone on, she had grown apart from her mother and decided to live her own life. And now, sitting across from her on the couch was Mark, who had all the boxes checked that she desired. He was smart, disciplined, and rich. What can I say? Kristen liked money, and saw Mark as a very safe bet. The clock struck 11, and they all had another glass of champagne. Cheers, they all said to each other as they drank the glass. The DJ stops playing music and starts talking on the microphone. Hey, attention everybody. It's 11 o'clock. Make sure you find your mate for the evening, because at midnight you need to have somebody to kiss. They say around here, if you don't have someone to kiss at midnight, the New Year's Eve stalker will come after you. We all looked at each other on the couch like, what did he just say? Around San Diego, we heard a story from the 80s about a guy so desperate for affection of a Mission Valley girl after he met her on New Year's evening and into New Year's Eve night. They were a match made in heaven. However, when alcohol's involved, people forget what's important to them. When the clock struck midnight, he caught her with another man at a club dance floor at the Gaslamp District. The man was so angry, he murdered both of them with a knife and took his own life right there on the dance floor. Jealousy can cause terrible things to happen. After hearing the DJ joke about the New Year's Eve stalker, we all looked at each other and laughed. I believe we're good. We have a good group of people here that are really into each other. I don't think there's any worry for me and Kristen. Then 11:15 rolls around. We're all still joking and laughing when Dan looks at Mark and gives him a wink and a nod. He looks at us and says, "Hey, we'd love to stay, but we gotta get going." What? Jenna and Kristen look extremely surprised. What do you mean you have to go? Dan says Mark and him have to go meet their wives, but it was nice talking to you both. Dan and Mark give Jenna and Kristen respective hugs when they leave. Kristen and Jenna look at each other completely shocked about what they had just witnessed. What kind of man pretends to be so awesome to a single lady and leaves her there with 45 minutes left on the clock? So we sit there for about 15 minutes, stewing over what had just happened. So we go to the dance floor while a couple songs play. We're out there for about 10 minutes. Then we see someone in the back of the crowd that doesn't look like anybody else. He's dressed in a tuxedo with an 80s hairdo, like feathered hair. It's really sticking out amongst the people in the crowd. Nobody else seems to notice him, which is odd. Jenna points him out to Kristen, and they both agree this guy is kind of weird, and he's staring directly at them. So they decide to leave the rooftop. They take the elevator down from the 30th floor to the 1st. As they do, they see the feathered-haired man coming towards the elevator. He disappears as the elevator closes. They both look at each other relieved. When they get to the 1st floor and start walking through the double doors through the front entrance of the lobby, they turn around to see the feathered-haired man once again walking towards them. They start to pick up their pace and get into the Uber that they requested in haste. As they get in, they see the feathered hair man in the lobby coming towards the double doors. They tell the Uber driver to start driving immediately. They got away. On the ride home, Jenna and Kristen are feeling much better. Jenna tries to make small talk with the Uber driver and not getting anywhere. He just doesn't want to talk, so Jenna asks him to play some music. He plays an old 80s station. That's fine, I guess. It's killing the awkward silence. Most people say that 80s music is one of the most calming musics out of all the generations. You can play it in any office, and people mostly accept it. They pull up to Jenna's house and thank the Uber driver for getting them out of a sticky situation. He says no problem and drives away. Kristen and Jenna are still able to see the ball drop on TV, just in time. What a sad New Year's this was, but at least we're safe, because that guy was really creeping us out. After the ball drop, Jenna gets in the shower and is getting ready for bed. When she gets out of the shower, she notices that the TV is playing pretty loud still. She goes to turn it down and sees a puddle of red liquid on the floor. It looks like a pool of blood is in the middle of the living room. She looked to see where the blood is coming from, and Kristen is lying in the corner of the room, dead. She's in a robe and completely vulnerable. She looks around to see if anybody's in the room, but doesn't see anybody. Could it be the feathered hair guy from the hotel? She runs to her room, locks the doors, calls the police, and puts some clothes on. As she's staring in the mirror when she's putting on her clothes, she sees a figure behind her with feathered hair. It's him. She turns around to see him face to face. He says to her, "You are alone on New Year's Eve. You're not supposed to be alone. You're supposed to be with somebody who cares about you. Sadly, no one will miss you. It is too late for us." The New Year's Eve stalker was real, and he had taken our souls. This New Year's Eve, make sure you have somebody who's loyal, who has integrity, and who you can trust. And make sure you get that kiss at midnight. A group of friends decided to spend the night at an old, abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town. This mansion had been abandoned for quite some time, maybe 30 years. The story was that it was owned by a well-off man named Victor Ravenswood that had a great stake in the town of, you guessed it, Ravenswood. He married a woman, Claire, that was much younger than he was. Things were good for a while, until Claire was caught having an affair with another well-off man from a distant town that was a main competitor to Victor. When he found the man in his house, Victor murdered his opponent with fury and rage. He then found Claire locked in a bedroom and took her life for her heinous crime. His weapon of choice was a Bowie knife. He wandered into town as the town square was very busy and took his life in front of the whole town for everyone to see. The tale of Victor was passed down through generations. The house was abandoned after that. No one wanted to buy the house after all that, so it stayed vacant. Even though they all knew the stories of Victor, they decided to stay overnight anyways to film a documentary for their YouTube channel. They all arrived at the mansion and got their equipment ready. They brought sleeping bags with them and a few lanterns. They initially explored the house and made sure there were no squatters already occupying the mansion. They set up their living area in the middle of the living room. The living room was centrally located in the middle of the mansion, with the stairs going up and wrapping around the entire living room, with a second-story balcony overlooking the living room. As the night went on, strange things started to happen. Doors would open and close on their own. Strange noises could be heard coming from the walls, and the temperature in the rooms would drop suddenly. The friends looked at each other with excitement and grabbed their cameras. They were able to capture some of the doors opening and closing by themselves. Since they were in a group and thrill seekers, they thought it was more fun than scary. They were trying to figure out what could have caused it. As they were filming, they felt a sharp drop in the temperature. They could suddenly see each other's breath. As they were walking through the halls, the beating was getting louder and louder. It was all fun and games until they saw the shape of a man on the second-story balcony. Who was that? They all looked at each other in actual fear this time. They had been through the house and no one was hiding anywhere. The dark figure suddenly brandished a Bowie knife and sprinted around the balcony and down the stairs. They all screamed and ran out of the house as quickly as possible. They got into their car and drove away, leaving all their equipment. When they got to a safe distance, they called the police. The police went to the mansion in a group of 3 officers, searched the house thoroughly, and found nothing. They collected the equipment and got it back to the group of friends. When they were all safe and sound at their studio, they decided to look at the footage they got and discovered something truly chilling. After chasing the friends out of the house, the figure went to the camera and looked directly into it. Who was that, they thought. They did a search of Victor Ravenwood, and sure enough, it was an identical match. They all agreed. Urban legends are usually based on a true story of some kind. If there is a story about a haunted, abandoned mansion, it's a good idea to steer clear of it. Be safe, explorers.
Urban legends are a horrific story or piece of information circulated as though true, especially one assumed to involve someone vaguely related or known to the teller. It is typically a fictional story, rooted in modern popular culture. For a small fishing town, it would be natural to have some interesting urban legend. A young couple is out on a date, driving around in their car. The town is a fishing hub in the northeast coast. There are a lot of secluded areas they could choose to hang out and have a little fun. They decide to park at an old, well-known makeout spot by a lake called Spivey Point. I know what you were thinking. Do people really still put their phones down and go to makeout spots? Sure they do. When they still live with their parents and need a place to go find a secluded spot to partake in displays of public affection, they do it. They get to a nice spot overlooking the town at Spivey Point and park the car. The guy gets out of the car, takes a flashlight, and looks around to make sure it is in fact secluded. The worst thing would be to park right next to some creeper in the middle of the woods. He gets back in the car and starts to woo his girlfriend. As they start to get intimate, they hear a strange scratching sound on the car door. It sounds like metal scratching on the side of the car. Since they are on a mountain, there are some gusty winds they have been hearing the whole time they've been there, but this for some reason was different. The sound drags on the car and sharply stops towards the aft right fender. The girl becomes frightened and begs her boyfriend to take her home, but he dismisses her fears and tries to calm her down. As the scratching grows louder and more insistent, the girl becomes more and more panicked. The boyfriend notices and has a concerned look on his face. He is thinking at least the doors are locked. At this point, there is something happening. Finally, the boyfriend agrees to take her home, and they quickly turn on the car. After a couple of turns, they start the car and start driving forward. As they are pulling away, the back right car door handle is pulled by someone or something. The boyfriend steps on the gas more aggressively. As they drive away from the spot they had been hanging out for 30 minutes, they see a tall, dark figure in the rearview mirror, holding a hook in its hand. The hook must have been the instrument used to make the metal-on-metal sounds they were hearing. This was extremely unnerving, as they were in close proximity next to this figure when they were in the middle of nowhere alone. They were not, in fact, alone. After a drive that felt very lengthy, they both made it home safely, but they were terrified by the experience. Who was the person at Spivey Point that they saw? They tell their friends and family about the Hook Man, and the story spreads like wildfire. Soon, everyone in town is warning each other not to park at Spivey Point at night, lest they too fall victim to the Hook Man. Curious still, they do some research and look up stories related to Spivey Point in the last 100 years. They discover that there was a murder at Spivey Point in the 1960s. A local fisherman was murdered in his car when he was with his girlfriend. The murderer was the girl's father. The fisherman's name was Jason Garvey. He was a well-liked man in town. His girlfriend was Stephanie Summers. She was known in the town as a promiscuous woman. Stephanie had flattered and convinced Jason to take her out and talked him into going to Spivey Point. Thinking he found love, he was willing to do just about anything for her. He did not know that Stephanie's father had followed them both. Upset at Stephanie's reputation around town, her father confronted her in a fit of rage. When the father pulled his daughter out of the car, Jason tried to protect her, only to end up being penetrated by a rusty hook. With the damage already done, Stephanie and her father buried the body of Jason Garvey at a secluded location up at Spivey Point. They had gotten away with the whole thing for a long time until someone purchased the land right where the body was buried and found it when digging up the land to plant crops. Evidence tied Stephanie and her father to the murder, and they were sentenced for life. It is said that Jason lurks around Spivey Point, seeking revenge for his death. Unfortunately, he is seeking the wrong people. Don't go out to Spivey Point. You might just end up coming face to face with the hookman, Jason Garvey. If you want to make out somewhere, get a room.